All right, so today's topic, we're going to be talking about communicating to/with students using activity feed and announcements. So those are two what we call widgets within the iLearn platform that you can use to communicate either to, and I think of to as a sort of one-way communication, a teacher communicating to the students, or with students. So I think of with as more of a two-way communication, some sort of way that they can reply back or respond. And so announcements, we can think of communicating to students because it's sort of like a one-way communication path, whereas activity feed, we can think of communicating with students because students are able to comment on posts. They can, it's a little bit more of a two-way communication for that reason. So what I'm gonna talk about today is those two widgets. I wanna show you some tips and tricks for using them, maybe some functionality that you didn't know existed in them. And then as we go through the presentation today, if you have questions about what I'm showing, please put them in the chat. And again, make sure it's about what I'm showing you just so I can try to answer the questions live as we go. And I want to just remind you that you will get the recording of this. So if you could avoid putting things in the chat like, can you show that again? It would be helpful if you just kind of wait for the recording and know that you'll be able to watch what I do again using the recording. All right. So I'm going to jump in. Before I jump on that slide, I'm going to actually jump into the iLearn platform. And so this should look slightly familiar, but basically I'm sitting inside what I call a sandbox course. A sandbox course is just a term we use to mean just a play space, just like a real sandbox where you play and build in. This is just a demo course, but it should look somewhat similar to what your course looks like that you might be using for summer school. If you're here and you're a summer school teacher, or maybe you're looking to prepare for September as well. I know we've got some people that are preparing for using this in September as well. So yours will look something like this. And so you can see on this homepage, now every course has a homepage. I'm sure you've figured that out by now. But when you come to a course, I'm sitting inside of a course right now. I'm sitting on the homepage, and there's two specific widgets I want to talk about today. So the first one is activity feed, okay? And so that's the widget that we see here. It takes up the 2/3 area. And then over on the left-hand side here, this is the announcements widget. And I've got some announcements sitting there. Your virtual field trips have all been pre-programmed to release each day within the announcements tool. And I want to just talk about, basically, they have very similar functionality in that they're used to communicate with students, but there's some very important differences that I want to distinguish between the two. So in high level, they're both meant to communicate reminders, little messages, notes to students. But like I said, they've got slightly differing functionality. So I'm going to pull up that differentiation or differentiator chart. And you certainly don't need to memorize all this. Remember, you will have the recording if you do want to really take in this chart. It's a lot of information, but high level, I just kind of want to explain the differences. You don't need to choose one or the other. You can use both in conjunction with each other. When students come into your course, they will see, they'll see both sitting there on the homepage, just like you see. So whether you post an announcements or they post an activity feed or you post an activity feed, they'll see it sitting there and they'll get a notification for both as well up in the little notification center. So activity feed, I like to describe it as a social media-like feel. Even the name itself, activity feed, it's like a feed, like a stream of information, sort of feels like what we see on many social media platforms. So it's very familiar to students, familiar to teachers even. People find it very easy to use and quite intuitive. So for that reason, I say it's very easy to get started with it and is good for beginners. One thing that's exclusive to Activity Feed is that it allows for student commenting and actually student posting if you do want to allow students to post. But those are both teacher controlled, so you can decide if you want to allow those. But that's something that doesn't exist in announcements, is there's no commenting on announcements, but there is in Activity Feed. It does also have the ability to create an assignment directly from that widget. So that's like a nice little shortcut. If you're building a lot of assignments in the class, you can use that widget to build a really quick one. I call it an express creation of an assignment. And then in Activity Feed, you can also pin posts to the top. So you'll notice in the announcements chart, we talked about, or it says you can reorder posts. You can't do that in Activity Feed, but you can post, pin posts to the top, so that specific ones come right up to the top. In the announcements widget, this one is teacher to student only, so there's no commenting, but it's got a little bit more functionality in terms of doing what I call kind of fancier things. So you can insert video notes. If you've heard of our video note functionality, it's an awesome tool for communicating with students. You can do that in announcements. You can't do that in Activity Feed. You can also use replace strings, which you might not know what those are, but I'll explain those when we dig into the announcements tool. Which is a fun way to add personalization to your announcements. Like I mentioned, you can reorder posts. You can also embed sites. So at the last office hours, I talked about embedding a Google Docs or embedding, using the embed code from other sites to embed into, it was content was the last office hours, but you can do it in announcements as well. And you can also use release conditions, which is a little bit, you'll notice beside can embed sites and can use release conditions. Both of them I put in brackets, they're more advanced. So it's a little bit more advanced functionality, probably not something that you want to get into right away, but just kind of knowing in your head that later on when you get a little bit more comfortable with the announcements widget, you could look to doing a little bit more of those fancier things like using release conditions, embedding sites. And so we won't get into those today because they're a little more advanced, and I do want to try to keep this webinar all on time, but just know that those are capabilities. And then the last kind of big difference is that with the announcements, you can copy those announcements from course to course, and you can't do that with Activity Feed. And you can always think of it as announcements. Sometimes I like to think of those as a little bit more formal, a little bit more less obviously conversation based, whereas Activity Feed is a little bit more social, a little bit more about the goings on of the class. It's like what's happening right now. So for that reason, when you're copying things over to another course, which if you're not aware of that, you can do that. You can copy all of your content from one course into another course. Activity Feed posts don't copy, but announcements do. So if you're thinking about the type of announcements that you're making and you think, you know, those might be useful in another course, you might want to use announcements because you will have that copy functionality. Now, I'm noticing a question in the chat about posting the same announcement to more than one class at a time. So you can copy things from course to course or copy announcements from course to course, but to be honest, it's probably faster just to copy and paste the content and go to your other course and create a new announcement. Unfortunately, currently there's no functionality to say like post to multiple courses at one time, although I do agree that would be a very useful feature, and I've heard that actually from NYC teachers recently and passed that feedback along. So that's potentially a feature that we'll see in the future, but not something that you can do with Activity Feed or announcements today. Like I said, there is that copy feature, but if you're looking to do it in multiple courses, I would just copy paste. That'd probably be the fastest way. All right, so I'll clear that question out. That's great. That's done. So if you embedded an assignment or lesson into your announcements, will it link to the unit or the lesson that you've created? I'll show you that once we jump into the actual environment. So let's go there now. And so yeah, copy paste. That last question there, posting the same Zoom meeting, copy paste is the best way, to be honest. All right. So I want to show you a couple things first with Activity Feed. So here is the Activity Feed. I've got a couple posts here already. And you'll notice I can click on create a post, super intuitive. You write your message and you've got some real basic formatting options. So good afternoon. You write your message. Maybe you want to add your little emojis. You don't have those in announcements. Like I said, you can think of activity feed a little more fun, a little more social. Announcements is a little bit more formal, if you will. So we've got those emojis in the activity feed, and you can add some, again, some basic formatting, some bulleted lists, that kind of thing. Now, if you want to link to something that exists in your course, you'll want to use this attach function down here. And so when you click on that, that will expand, and you've got lots of different options for attaching items to your post. Now, file upload, you know, the link to Google Drive documents, you can absolutely do that. But what I like to do is if I'm linking to a lesson or something that already exists in my content tool, then I want to link directly to that item in content. So what I can do is use this attach link to existing activity. This is actually a very powerful button. If I click on this, this will pull up all of the tools within the platform or within the course, and I can link to anything that I've built in my course, including some actually stuff that's outside the course as well, like Google Drive, OneDrive, even just an external URL. But I want to call out here, let's say, for example, I want to call out like a specific lesson, kind of like the question that we saw. So in my content tool, I have a bunch of units that are either the third-party content or stuff that I've added myself, like teacher resources. I added a unit called teacher resources, and I added a unit called Google Files and uploaded things there. And so if I click on, let's say I have a supplemental activity that's sitting in my content, I've got some items here. I can check off one of those. And now the students get a link directly to that item. So maybe my instructions are something like, please review the following document prior to our Zoom meeting today, for example. And then I've got my option to allow comments or not. And some of these other ones are pretty intuitive, I think, right? Pulling from your Google Drive, attaching a video from the web if it's a YouTube video or something like that. But I really want to encourage you to take a look at this existing activity because it's a great time saver. And sometimes people don't always make use of that one. And it's really makes it really easy to link to things that you want your students to do and easily point them there. You know, I've got some additional assignments that I've added to my my course. And there's all my assignments there. I could easily add an assignment there. So please, maybe now I'm changing this to a bulleted list. Please review the document, submit to the example assignment folder. And now they're both sitting there and the students can click on them. Then I can obviously post later or post it now, and I'll post now. And so looking at the question, how can I post a specific virtual field trip to an announcement or activity feed? You would do that same thing. So the virtual field trips all exist within content. And so I could go to attach, and then it's an existing activity, and go to content and find my virtual field trip folder, and then post the one for the day. Now it always has to be an item, so I would just select the first one because there's 3 items in each virtual field trip, it looks like. And so now when the student clicks on that, they'll click on that, but they'll fall into content. They'll be able to hit the arrow to go next and kind of navigate through it. All right. Close that. Although just note though that the virtual field trips, if you aren't aware, I'm sure you've seen in the announcements that those get published every day automatically. So you can see here's the July 30th one. So just note that those are being published each day automatically. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat here. I appreciate you guys all keeping the chat relevant to, or sorry, the Q&A relevant to what I'm presenting today. And I just want to make sure I haven't missed any or any that I can really address right now. So Kelly, no, I won't be going over how to make assignments. I'll dismiss that one. So can students respond in writing to your attachment? So they can respond to the actual post. They can add a comment to this. But in my attachment here, this is, you can think of it as just a link to the assignment. So when they click on that link, they'll go to the area for submitting their assignment, which would be either they're uploading a document or whatever they're whatever you've asked them to do in the assignment. All right, so that one's done. How do you get the items into the content folder? So for that one, Brian, you'll want to watch our last office hours all about the content tool. And then we've also got lots of resources as well that I'll share where you can learn a little bit more about the content tool. So will the post later function, can you set the post for future dates? Absolutely, that's the purpose of it. So for when you're creating a post and you want to say post later, you can, and I can't do it on an old one. Let me go create a new post, post later, and you just choose the date and time that you want it to post. The old office hour videos, as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll send out the recordings of those. They'll also be posted, and I'll go through that at the end. Okay. All right. Some of the others I'm leaving in the feed because I'll address those. Here we go. Address those kind of when I'm talking about something else. All right, so the next thing, so that's everything I essentially wanted to show you about activity feed. And so I'll pull up that differentiator again. And we've kind of gone through activity feed, and then these are features that are exclusive to activity feed. So easy to get started, good for beginners, allows for that student commenting and posting, allows for the express creation of an assignment, which I didn't show you, but I'll point it out when we hop back. And you can pin post to the top, which I didn't show you either. So I'll show you those two things real quick. And so here's a post right under the three dots, pin post to top. That will move it up to the top. This one was already at the top, but you can choose a later one and pin it to the top. The other thing you can do with activity feed is I'm on the message tab by default, but you'll notice there's this assignment tab right here. And so you can, I call it an express creation of an assignment, which is kind of like creating an activity feed post and an assignment in one go. You can always go to the assignments tool, which is in the toolkit, and create it there, and then link to it in activity feed. It's kind of just different ways of doing the same thing, depending on what you, depending on how you like to work and what order you like to do things in. All right. All right, so again, if you did just join us, I noticed things are, the number of participants is creeping up, so people are continuing to join. So I just want to remind everyone, I am going to be dismissing questions that are not relevant to what I'm actually presenting today, just to try to keep the Q&A on topic and relevant, and make it so that I can actually answer all of the questions in the session today that pertain to what I'm presenting on. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about announcements, and it's 12:26 right now. So I'm going to try to do this within the next couple of minutes, and then we'll move to kind of open Q&A until 1 o'clock. I promised a 20-minute demonstration, so I want to try to keep it on time here, which I'm obviously already behind. So let's get into announcements. So as I mentioned, the announcements has those virtual field trips that are preloaded in that get automatically added to your summer school courses, but you can also create your own announcements as well. And so that's what I've done here, this little announcement. And so as I mentioned in that table, the announcements tool, you can add a video note, which I really love. It's probably one of my favorite features in the platform. It's not just available in announcements, it's available all throughout the platform, but a great use of it is in the announcements tool. And so you've got a couple other more fancier options, I like to say, for in the announcements widget. So things like changing the color, changing the font size, things like that. You can't do that in activity feed. So if you like that control, you might want to use announcements. You can also add images to your announcements. There's just a little bit more robustness in terms of the formatting that you can do. So I want to show you how to do some of these things. Oh, the last thing you can do, or that I didn't mention, but I mentioned in that chart, is you can use replace strings. And so you'll notice right here it says, "Good morning, Jessica." That's my name. And the actual code of the announcement doesn't say Jessica, because when everybody else logs in, I want them to see their name. And there's a special little, what we call a replace string, that you can do or use to do that, which is kind of exciting and kind of fun. So I always like showing it. So I'm going to create a new announcement from scratch here. I'm going to click on the drop down. This is kind of a shortcut there, and just go to new announcement. And so when you come to new announcement, basically you need to have a headline. And so maybe I want to use my announcements for daily work, or say, I'm going to say July 30th, daily work or daily schedule, something like that. It's in this example, I'm going to say that I'm using announcements to every day I want to post a little reminder of what they're supposed to be doing today. And so here's my July 30th daily schedule. And I'm going to do what I did for that sample announcement where I had a hi, and I'm going to use that replace string. And so this is, again, a fun little fancy optional thing, if you like it, is use the curly brackets. So this is a curly fancy bracket. You usually get there by just going shift, and then it's near your enter key. And then you just write first name, all one word, and close your curly brackets. And that's going to take whoever's logged in. You'll notice up at the top here, I'm logged in as Jessica. Whoever's logged in, when they log in, they will see their name there. So the students all see their names, and they get greeted by name, which is just kind of nice and kind of fun. So a fun thing to do. And that's not available in activity feed. It's just in announcements. So you can put it in the headline or in the content. I'm going to say, hi, first name. Today we, please complete the following items, let's say. And I can have a bulleted list here of items to complete. Now this symbol here, you might recognize that from the activity feed. It's the same as linking to existing activities. So if I pull this up, that's going to give me that same list that we saw in activity feed, which will bring up all of the content in my course, as well as external items that I can pull from, an external URL that I can create, and I can start saying, all right, I want them to review the following document, and put a quick link to that. And yeah, replace strings can be used in the banner as well. So if I go to content, and I know I've got an item called 10 rules for writing fiction. And so now I've put a link right to that. They don't need to go looking for it. They just click on it, and bam, they're on that document that I want them to view. Join the Zoom meeting at 11 a.m. And then I might want to put the URL to the Zoom meeting there. And I've kind of got, I can either put a colon and then go to quick links. And then go URL. And then I can say Zoom, or actually this is the URL. I don't have a Zoom link with me, so I'm just gonna put a YouTube video URL and Zoom meeting. And then it opens in a new window, insert. So join the Zoom meeting at 11 a.m. and that's the link to the actual Zoom meeting. And maybe they're supposed to upload one item to their portfolio, and students have control over their portfolio. So there's no link to give there. It's just upload an item to your portfolio. Now in announcements, I could also do video notes. And so let's say I actually want to explain all of this orally as well to my students. So I'm going to actually move my cursor up here, because this is where I want the video to go. So be mindful of where your where your cursor is. And we're going to use this tool here, insert stuff. This is where you find the video note tool. And as I said, this is available in content, in assignments, when giving feedback on things, you can give a video note. But I love it for announcements to add some personalization. Your students get to see your face every day, and you're interacting with them. So you click on insert stuff, and then you see there's add video note. And so I can click on Add Video Note. That will activate the webcam on your computer. You'll probably get some questions like, can you access, allow your browser to access your microphone and your webcam? But you just click on New Recording and it starts recording as it's doing now. Just click on New Recording and you hit Next. You can record up to 30 minutes, so lots of time there. And then, day 4, schedule, because say I'm going over, what they're supposed to do that day, where I tell them all about these things that they should be visiting and doing. You can also add subtitles to your video, and so I was speaking English there, or I should say captions, not subtitles. So captioning, automatic captioning, you just select the language you're speaking and get it to automatically generate those captions. And then when you do that, you can hit Insert. It might take a second, it might not pop up right away, but you don't need to sit here and wait. It'll do what it needs to do in the background, and will show up once it's ready. So I'm good with that. That's my video note, which we'll see once I publish it. And then this insert image is an option I like to point out as well. So you can pull in images and have some nice images, which you can't do in Activity Feed either. So underneath that, there's a couple of other options like publishing it very similar to post later, like we saw in Activity Feed, but with announcements, you get a little bit more functionality, a little bit more robustness, like you can add a start date and an end date, so the date that it gets removed. So actually, you might notice your virtual field trip announcements, those go away each day, and that's because they have a start date, so they're set to publish on a certain day at the beginning of the day, and they're set to go away at the end of the day, and that's why they disappear. So you can do the same thing if you want your announcements to disappear if they're not relevant after a certain date and you don't want to kind of clog up your homepage. You can have them ending. And then there's some other options here. There's also release conditions, which I mentioned at the beginning, which is a little bit more of advanced functionality. But if you do want to learn more about those, I definitely recommend checking out our YouTube channel, which is linked in the Get Help Here area on the iLearn site, which I'll go through at the end. But I'll hit publish. And yeah, Robert, so captions, only the language spoken in the video, or can it be different languages? That's right, only the language spoken. So it's not a translation tool, it's a captioning tool. All right, so now I've hit publish, and when I do that, when you publish an announcements tool, it actually brings you into the announcements tool where you see all the announcements that are sitting there, either waiting to be published or previously published. But if I want to see what it looks like on my homepage, I can just go to Course Home or click on the course name. And you can see it down here, my little announcement here. July 30th, I've got my links. Makes it really easy for students to know what they're supposed to do that day and easily get there. This video note tool I want to mention, one thing I really like about it, speaking of those questions around can we post an announcement to multiple courses? So while I did say that functionality is not available, what will happen when you add your video note is it will go into your own video note library. And so when you're in another course, if I edit this one real quick, let's say I'm in a new course now and I want to create the same announcement, I can actually pull from, and if it's the same video that I want to use, I can use this insert stuff button again. And rather than go to add video note, you'll see there's video note search. And that search is based on keywords that you put in the description. You might have noticed that I had to title my video and a description. So it'll search the title and the description for those keywords. So you can find your video note and pull it into any course. And so that's handy if you have the same, especially for like an introductory video where you're introducing yourself and you want to use it, every semester. It can always be sitting in your video note library. Okay, I've talked too much now because I'm way over time. So I want to, again, I'm going to prioritize questions that relate to what I'm actually presenting on, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to start with, are there any other codes we can put into a replace string? That question always comes up when I show replace strings because, yeah, they're fun and they're exciting. And there are other ones like last name, org unit name, which is actually the course name. The most popular one is definitely first name. That's what most people use. But if you are ever curious about getting the whole list, you can go to documentation.brightspace.com and just search by keyword for replace strings. And you'll get the whole list of everything that's available. And so they're right here. And there's our whole list. So really the most useful one is first name, but there are other ones there. And there's a little video on using them too. All right. So some of these questions I'm dismissing. If you came in late, you might not have heard me say that I'm from D2L. I'm not from iLearn. So some of the questions around just your expectations for grading virtual field trips, things like that, I can't necessarily answer. So I'll just be dismissing questions like that. If you don't mind, I'll try to just stick it to questions or keep it to questions that I can answer regarding the actual iLearn platform.
Thank you, Jess, because I know we had a big crowd today, and there are some questions that I'm trying to answer in the question and answer area as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, there are some like the virtual field trip. Those are all, it's a plus. It was from the Science Summer in the City folks that added those experiences for students. You don't need to grade them. There is a survey that students take after every field trip, and it does not affect their overall grade. It's just a nice to have type of experience that they want to provide for students.
Perfect. Thanks, Whitty. And by the way, Winnie is from iLearn. I saw a question in the chat. Who's talking now? And I know Winnie joined a couple minutes late, so I didn't introduce her at the beginning. But Winnie, do you want to explain who you are?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Winnie Bracco. Some of you might have received my email. I am the Executive Director for the iLearn program. And this is the first time that we are rolling out iLearn to the Summer in the City folks. So it is an experience that we are all going through right now, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible by providing a lot of professional development during the summer and into the fall, because as you know, iLearn is one of the platforms that your school can elect to use. So there will be two choices. It's iLearn or the DOE Google Classroom. Okay, and I'm sure your principals, if we do have principals in the audience, that your principals will share with you the decision. Okay, and if there are any questions, I'm looking at the chat myself, so I will try to answer as many of those as possible as well. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I also want to say that I am compiling the list of the 3 days of these sessions, and you will all get a copy of each one of those sessions. So I know that people couldn't make session 1. Let's say when we did the grouping, you will get the recordings for all 3 sessions. Okay, so not to worry. And we're putting more of these together, so you will get emails and calendar invites for the upcoming ones. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jess.
No problem. And I want to thank everyone for keeping your questions relevant to the session. This is great. This kind of makes it a little bit more manageable for sure. So next session is not yet scheduled, just so you know. All right, let me keep moving through the questions here. So is this platform compatible with interactive Google Docs? That was answered in the second session that was done on Tuesday today. We talked about, or Tuesday, 2 days ago. So you'll want to review the recording from Tuesday's session to learn a little bit more about that. So can you post a message to just one student on the activity feed, or is it for the whole class only? That's a great question, Kathleen, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying about release conditions. So activity feed is essentially always for the entire class. So you can't post a message to just one specific student. But announcements, because it has the release condition functionality, you can release announcements to specific groups of students, or if you set up individual student groups, you can release to specific students. And I show all about how to do that in the first office hours session that we offered last week. And so you'll get the recording to that, and I encourage you to watch that to learn a little bit more about that. All right. And so some of these questions I'm just missing because I've already answered them or they were asked earlier. And so I just encourage you to review the recording for that. So students may have the same first name. How do you identify or personalize the work to that student? So I'm not sure, I'm assuming, Nicole, that this question has to do with the replace strings, I think. So if I'm answering this wrong, please feel free to reword your question and ask it again. But it's okay if they, right, with replace strings, it's just gonna grab their first name and they'll see their own name. So if two students have the same name, that's okay. When that one student logs in, they'll see their name. When the other student logs in, they'll see their name. So if I didn't understand your questions properly, feel free to re-ask it. All right, so this question around where do students write their responses that are given in the assignments? Do we have to provide the writing document for them? That's a good question, and that depends on how you set up the assignment. So today's session is not about the assignments tool. I'd probably recommend if we, at the end of the session, I'm gonna go through where to access some resources, but maybe I'll mention it now. This Get Help Here area has a link to our YouTube channel, and I would encourage you to watch some YouTube videos on our announcements tool, and you can learn about the different types of, sorry, on our assignments tool, and you can learn about the different assignments that you can assign.
So Jess, there was a question about recording in the iLearn platform. So I am deferring that to, let's say, using Zoom in your session. So if you open up Zoom, and Zoom is integrated with iLearn. So if you open up a Zoom session, you can record your Zoom session. So if you're doing a synchronous lesson with your class using Zoom, which is all wrapped up in iLearn, you can record that session and then post it for your students to review later. So of course, we recommend you recording smaller snippets, 5 to 10 minutes of instruction, and then you can post them into your iLearn, so that students can always refer back.
Perfect. And then, of course, also obviously using the video note tool would be an option too if it's not a synchronous session, and you just want to pre-record something. You can use the video note tool for that as well.
Right. Perfect. And also there was a question about students using a video note to give feedback. I know that, I think it's only in assignments, is that right, Jess?
And the discussions tool.
Okay, so there are two places where then students can provide a video feedback, in discussions and in assignments. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That was a good question. Got me stumped a little bit there. I forgot about the discussion. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love video notes for students. Sometimes it takes them a little while to get used to it or to get comfortable with it. And you might have to model you posting videos a lot first before students are comfortable uploading. But definitely a great tool to use. Bring that personalization, that online feel, make it feel a little bit more like, humans interacting and like in a real class. So Kelly, you yeah, go ahead, Winnie.
No, I just want to remind everyone that they are going to get the videos of the first 3 sessions. Today is our 3rd session. So all the people that are in this room right now will get all 3 recordings. So not to worry. Okay, go ahead.
Perfect. So Cindy, looking at this one, as a pre-K teacher, how do I repeat the flow of the day or the daily schedule? For example, center time, math, read aloud, science, social studies. So without me knowing in depth what you want your day to look like, the best thing I could probably recommend is using the announcements tool pretty extensively. So some teachers I've seen will, you can create a table in the announcements. So it's got that deeper formatting options that activity feed doesn't have, and create a table that kind of goes through, or like a chart, right, that goes through the day, the flow of the day, and kind of in each section will have links to content that you want them accessing or assignments that you want them completing that day. You can kind of build that for each day, and you can build those in advance and have them scheduled to go out on each day. So I hope that helps. Can you say more about the video note tool? I really took you through the whole functionality of the video note tool. So if there's a specific question you have, I really did show you everything on how to use that tool. So if you have a specific question about it, just let me know what that is, because I essentially showed you everything about how to use that tool.
Hey, Jess, this is a good question in terms of like the numbers that are on your screen right now, the 2 and the 1, those little squares. Can you talk about them?
Yeah, those are essentially mean that there's something waiting for you to look at in the or something new in the course. So either a student has submitted to an assignment box, or a student has posted a discussion question, or made a discussion post. It's like a little notification for any new activity in your course. And then when you go into it, if I go back into that course, your course overview widget, let me jump back into that course. This course overview widget will give you some updates around, like, 3 students submitted to a quiz, and give you a little more information about what those numbers might be referring to. Let's see what else here. So yes, absolutely, we have a resource on the video note tool that is in our YouTube channel. And so if I go back, that Get Help Here icon has lots of great resources to explore. So there's the YouTube channel here. And those are filled with tons of videos on using the platform. And if you search within that, you'll find videos on lots of different things, including video note. I like this question. Is there a way to practice using the iLearn platform before we are using it with a class, like a demo version? Yeah, so Gabriel, iLearn is actually working right now to create, I use the term sandbox course, so it's like a play dummy course to kind of build and explore. And so they're working on creating a sandbox course for every single teacher in the New York City Department of Education. So I don't know if you have any more insight into the timeline, but I'm thinking it'll be within the next 2 weeks or so. They're going to be building Sandbox. So be on the lookout for that. When you log in, you'll see under the waffle here, you should have a course called Your Name Sandbox, something like that. And you know that that's a play space where you can practice and build just like you would in a regular sandbox.
Yeah, and they will all have that 101 training course.
Oh, that's a good point too. Yes, thank you. I didn't talk about that yet. So every teacher is automatically enrolled in the iLearnNYC 101 training course. So in addition to these links being great places to explore, if you prefer the idea of just like a self-directed course, a course that you work your way through to learn about iLearn, I'd recommend going into this iLearnNYC 101 course and completing the modules in there. Because that's a great little introduction on how to use the platform as well. And the other advantage to doing that is you are enrolled as a student in that course. So you can see what it's like to experience the platform firsthand, taking a course in the platform as a student, which is really good insight to have as a teacher.
And I also want to add, Jess, that we're going to start with our professional development next week. For schools that have decided on using iLearn, those principals that have reached out to us and provided us with a staff list, we're going to be beginning our training for schools beginning next week. So if you are one of those teachers in one of those particular schools, you will have 6 hours of training as to how to really use the platform to create your content, do everything that Jess is showing us and more. This way you're acclimated with the tools and will be able to start the first day of school with some content, with your students enroll, and have lessons ready for them. So we are starting very early this year because we know we do have a lot of schools. And Jess is going to then continue with these 1-hour sessions 2 to 3 times a week. So if you're one of those people that are getting onboarded early, you can always come into these sessions and learn more. And Jess is bringing up the Brightspace tutorial, which is a great resource.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer the question around, do you have any guidance for students on how to upload their work? Elementary students might not be familiar with the workflow. I'd recommend if you're teach lower elementary grades to use the activity feed to post your assignments, because then it's just a button that says submit. It's super, super clear for them. That was kind of another reason for us developing the activity feed, was to make it very, very user-friendly for younger learners. So let's say if you, let me just give us a second to load. You make your assignment right here. And then actually, as some people were asking about the different options for assignments, there's file submission, text submission on paper, observed in person, but I'll hit post. And what will happen is, you see, for me, I have 16 students in my class. So as a teacher, I see how many students have submitted it. But for a student, when I come here, this is a blue button that says submit. So it's one button that they click, and then they're either pulling from their Google Drive, or uploading the document if it exists in Word, or creating a video note if it's if you're asking them to do a video, they can do that through here. And there are videos on our YouTube channel. Oops, I just pulled them up here for showing how to submit an assignment. So if you do feel that they need some guidance, you can look through these videos and see if there's one that you think would be helpful for them. You'll notice it says learner. Those are ones that are aimed at learners, versus instructor. Those are ones that are aimed at teachers.
So there was also a question about, is the only way for students to submit work is by uploading it? It depends on what the assignment is. I mean, you can have them do a video note if you want them. Let's say it's a music class and they have to sing something to you. You can have them submit it in a video note. You can have them take a picture of something and upload it to the portfolio section, or even upload it as a document or a JPEG. So there are different ways of students that students can submit their work.
That's right.
Now, there was a question about replacement strings. I know you touched upon that, Jess. Can they do a replacement string in a bulk email?
Yeah, I didn't answer that one because that one kind of stumped me. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. And so I'd probably recommend just sending yourself a test email with a replace string and then seeing if it comes through as your name or not.
Yeah.
But you got me on that one.
Oh, me too. They got us both. I'm thinking not, but that's what I'm thinking, because that's more for an individual thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can do it with intelligent agents, which is another tool that bulk sends emails. So I feel like maybe yes, but give it a try.
Right, but not with replacement strings, with the IA, yeah.
Is this user-friendly for co-teachers who have two DOE accounts? So it is possible. I don't know if this answers your question, or Winnie, if you want to jump in here, but you can add another teacher to your class so that they can have teacher privileges within your class, and you add them through the class list.
Yes. So in STARS, you can add additional teachers to your class, because your classrooms are going to be created via STARS. So your programmer, if they want the IEP teacher in there, or they want the paraprofessional, if you have one in your class, they will be enrolled automatically via STARS. So those, and yes, you can have additional teachers, not just one teacher. You can also have your push-in teacher. Whoever's going to be providing services to your student can have access to the classroom. And then going back to the first session where we did groups, you might want to set up a group of students that will only see what your IEP teacher is giving them. So there's a lot of ways to customize each one of your classrooms. So if your para if you have a one-on-one para, you might want to create a group for that student so that the para can help that particular student, and none of the other students will see that work.
And I'm just looking at, where is it? I saw a question that was very pertinent to what you were saying. Was there a limit on how many
I think
teachers you can have? And the answer is no. Or go ahead, Winnie.
Well, there is a limit because of STARS. STARS will limit it up to 5 teachers.
There we go.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
the limit right now is 5. But if you were only using, let's say, we were not attached to STARS, there's unlimited that you can enroll in the iLearn platform. But because we are connected to STARS, the limit is 5.
And then this one, I noticed, can parents get training too? Actually, I want to show you this site here that we have. This is a site specifically built for parents about using Brightspace. So I'll pop this one in the chat, because when I put the answer in the, type the answer to your question, it doesn't, that you can't click on the link. So just refer to the chat for the answer to that one. There's the link there, and that's a great one to share with parents.
So Jess, I just want to touch on the Brightspace Pulse app, which I think is phenomenal for all our, mobile users. Now everybody's on their phone. So it is the Brightspace Pulse app, it's called. You can download it onto your phone or onto your tablet, and iLearn works wonderfully on the mobile devices, and you can see all your classes. You can get notifications. You can, if something new is posted, you can get a notification. If a test is posted, you can get a notification. There's a whole host of check marks that you can activate for what you want to get to be notified on. So it's a great app. So I would definitely download that as a plus to using.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're at the top of the hour now, Jess.
We are, yeah. I'm just checking real quick if there's any quick ones I can really knock off. Like, can you provide a model teacher class as a method of reference? I'd probably think of the iLearnNYC 101 course as a model class. You won't be able to manipulate it, but you can kind of use it as a model that then you can build and play around in your own sandbox course. And try to model it. Yep.
Can I just put in the chat? We have the iLearn overview that's on our website, and it's right in the home page. So if you go to that website, I just put in the chat, iLearnNYCDOE.org. Right in the home page, there is an iLearn overview, and it gives you a sample of what an elementary school might look like and how they can set up their classrooms and how a high school would set up their classrooms. So if you go through this video, it'll show you. It's very telling, because what we're giving you in these 20 minutes to an hour really just is the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. So this is a great overview just to get a flavor of what you can really do in the platform. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. We had a really great crowd. For those of you who have stayed through the whole entire session, thank you. And Jess and I will be scheduling additional office hours like these for next week. And we'll send out an email to everyone.